Okay, I think we'll go ahead and begin. I'd like to welcome everybody and call the meeting to order and ask that roll be called, please.
Booth?
Here.
Bozeman?
Here.
Disherman?
Here.
Holzhausen? Hummels?
Here.
Green?
Here.
Zhao?
Here.
Okay, would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll move on to the public participation portion of the meeting. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board? Okay. This will conclude the public participation portion of the meeting, and we'll now move on to the information and discussion items. Tom Leahy is here with us tonight, the consultant for the Illinois Association of School Boards, and he's going to discuss the results of the online survey, interviews of staff, parents, community members, the search timeline, and discussion of the announcement of vacancy, the brochure for the full-time superintendent search. Welcome,
Thank
Tom.
you. Appreciate that. Maybe a little bit out of that order, but the same topics will be covered here. I first of all want to thank the staff and community members that I've met in the past 2 days for the hospitality. They've all been very helpful, especially when I'm in the office, in a little conference room next to this nice young lady's office, and she will give me paper clips and little binder clips, and copies. Heather's been very helpful too, this young lady as well, but everyone has just been super to work with. I actually met yesterday with 5 groups: unit office staff, a session, food service staff, K-5 staff at the grade school, Dunlap Grade School. Happened to have the opportunity to meet all of the, I think, certified staff. Is that who I saw mostly?
It was mostly.
About 150 staff who actually had a day already planned for doing some work, and I was allowed to take that slot, and that's a good thing because it got them there to be able to do that. And then 6 through 12 staff at the high school cafeteria, a very similar situation. So I was with them for 40 to 45 minutes, and I developed a process of collecting information, and you'll receive that this evening. Then at a community member meeting last evening, and then also this morning, transportation staff, bus drivers, met at the center there by where the buses are near the high school. And by the way, I was sharing with somebody, they're the most talkative group I had. It was amazing. It's just neat because they were just good people and they love their babies driving the bus. They told me that, especially. It didn't hurt that I told them I drove a bus for 4 or 5 years when I was teaching and had to try to make ends meet, you know. But maintenance and custodial staff, had a few of them. And then district administrators in the high school room. And so I've met with, and you'll see the numbers actually. Heather was always very kind. We need to turn it up here a little bit.
Yeah, be able to hear you.
All right. I have trouble sitting down, so I've been sitting too much, I think. But Heather was very helpful in making sure that when I took notes of each meeting, and that's how we did it. We did it either by individuals like ourselves in a group like this, or a group of 150 divided up into 8 or 10 each group, and then they reported out what they talked about of the questions. And those questions are different than the online survey. That closed a couple of days ago. But this particular process calls for 4 areas. What's unique about here? You're going to see all this information in a bit. What's unique about Dunlap School District? What sets it apart from others? What is special and what are you most proud of? What are the major challenges and concerns you have? And then finally, the 4th thing is, what are you looking for? What characteristics in a new superintendent? And so when I recorded that by hand, I actually then would scan it, Heather would scan it to Mary at our office, and she'd be typing them through yesterday, today, and today, and got them to me this afternoon, and I put together the documents and made the copies at district office. District office staff were kind enough to let me sit in a room and do that at that place. So I want to share that information with you so you know that. Tonight's stuff we'll be working on the timeline, kind of some things you already know. I think you've seen the latest one that we have a suggestion of. The online survey reports, the brochure. The brochure I shared with you in an email, but it's been now edited and revised to include ideal candidate section pieces that are a result of the online survey and some of the interviews yesterday and today. And then I'll hand to you at the end the online comments and also the interview comments that I've recorded today. So I want to pass out. And if you, Tamara, you can keep one of the matter of reference. And I see that Teresa made it. How are you?
How are you doing?
Good. Sorry. I will sit. All right, so take a look. Now, is that better? All right. Take a look at the timeline and know that our work now is going to be driven from March 1. That's the date that we suggest that this search close to applicants. We now have near 29, I think 29 individuals who have accessed the application process. And so we believe it's proper to let this now stay open. After the brochure is distributed, it'll be finalized hopefully this evening, very close. That's good. I'll bet they do that again, don't they? I think one other night we were here that happened, didn't it? So with that, March 1st would be the closing date. We will, after that, review, of course, applications, screen them. We'll have interviews structured of them, and then we'll present candidates to the board sometime around that March 19, 20, 21, or 2. That date is what the board needs to set next, would be the date to have me come back and present the candidates to you that we're recommending for interviews. Then you'll have your initial interviews not long after that. You need to set dates for the interview dates too. I mean, if you have 6 candidates, you can do them 3 per night for 2 nights. And it's typical that a board by itself will interview the first round and then cut it back to 3, let's say, to have come back. And that's when we'll come in and we have a process we've talked about. And I don't know, Heather, if this is a time to discuss that as to how to get people to sign up for the, I'd ask of her to maybe tell you that. Is that, can you?
Yeah, we can. All I had come up with is just a draft of a Google form that we could send out to all of our parents through School Messenger, just like we do with any other survey. But then if they were interested in participating, they could fill that out. It lists their building affiliation, just gathers their first, last name, email, contact information. That way, we're soliciting the community and getting input from everyone. And I could send that out so you guys could provide me any feedback, but then we could head out to people whenever.
So
we want.
just parents or parents and community
And
members?
staff.
Parents
And staff.
community.
And
Yeah.
staff members.
Staff.
Yeah. One concern I have when you open it entirely, which it may not be an issue, is the number of people who come. And although we did the interim focus group, same type of process with 50 people there, and by no means could all 50 ask questions because it's too much. But they all had an opportunity to give feedback on the potential for success. That's the key. So.
Staff, I think we could still go through the DEA and ask them to provide representatives. I felt
Okay.
that worked out well last time, as long as you guys felt that did, and we could discuss that with them, but.
Okay, so that will be determined based on when it is, once you have identified your finalists, your 2 or 3, probably 3, then we can develop the timing for that. So with that, that would be the second interview by the board. We typically do it where, like we did last time, where they stair-step through it. You may have a desire to have a different situation in the sense that you want candidates to come in and see your location. You might want to give them tours of the buildings. You might want to have a social time with them. I don't know. We can work through that and help you with the development of that once you determine how many finalists you're going to have back. So it needs to wait until after your first round of 6, let's say, narrow the pool, then decide how you're going to manage that. So that's yet to come. Sometime in April, probably. It could be earlier, but you would do a site visit to the location of your preferred candidate. So all of those things are still in work in progress, but the main thing to know is that March 1, if you're agreeable, is the closing date that we recommend, because we discussed the possibility, as you may recall, in fact, Karen, you and I and another person talked about trying to expedite this a little bit. The concern I have about that is it's too fast. And I tried to go back into writing down dates. Something would have to happen about every 3 days. and it just can't occur that quickly. And these candidates need time to finish their applications and not make it appear as if there is a rush, because it can cause constant trouble. So that timeline, if you're okay with it, main thing is the closing date, and that will be on the brochure as well. So if I may, next, we're going to go to the next topic, and that is the online survey. And that, by the way, drives the brochure contents.
I think there's enough.
Okay. So notice that this is just a summary of what this document and the other ones that you'll get with the interview results, yesterday and today's. It's an aid in developing the criteria, of course, because it identifies characteristics in its survey of what you're looking for. It can also help you to develop preparation for interview of candidates. It also can help the actual new successful superintendent to read all of this information, to learn about here. If I had entered a district where this had occurred when I entered 3 times as a superintendent, I would have valued this a great deal, because it tells the story. It tells it somewhat of a point in time, like you've had in a few months, but it tells a lot more than that, because the interview things are going to show you that people are telling you about a lot of stuff, having to do with facilities, having to do with compensation, having to do with class sizes, having to do with many, many things. And that's great for you to see and for a new person to see. So the online survey was filled out. You guys actually did yours by hand on paper, if you recall, so that's the same one. 7 board members, 7 students filled it out online, 122 staff members, and 379 parents. So you had 512 individuals complete the online survey. The next page is really the center around what helps us to develop the information in the brochure that I sent to you, kind of a draft of it previously, but I have a new one here that is the most updated and current. But notice that you have, and that's I apologize for the size of the font. It's small. You guys are so young you'll read it well, but I have trouble here. But with that, the students' top 7 are identified. And you can see that they're highlighted in yellow. The parent and community members' top 7 are identified. And this may sound familiar because we did something like this last time, just a little bit. Staff members' top 7 are identified. Board members' top 6. And the reason I stopped at 6 is because the next one would have been 1, 2, 3 more. And it was only 2 responses in that box. And the fact is, you have in your group the ability to say to me, we want this one in or this one not, or this in or out, and you're going to see that in just a bit. So the summary of this is, of the top 6 or 7, all 4 groups rated number 5, number 1, and number 3 in their top group. So number 5 is acts with integrity, fairness, and ethical manner. Number 1, success of every student and vision of learning. These are kind of abbreviated from what the form said, but that's the gist of it. Number 3 is management of the organization. Of 3 of the groups, and you could see what those are if you analyze it closer, but of 3 groups, number 2, number 4, and number 13 were in their top group. So number 2 is school culture and instructional programs. Number 4 is collaborates with faculty and community. And number 13 is maximize financial and human resources. Then of 2 groups, number 14 was in the top group. And that is long and short range district goals, and that means to develop those, how to do it. Then you had 4 others that are in one group, 12, 8, 10, and 15. For now, at least, in tonight's purpose, I drew the line at those 7 that are in the top groups for the 2, 3, or all. I didn't put anything in the brochure, and you'll see this from the only one group. The other thing you had input on was teaching experience. And from the numbers, when you look at it, students had 4 say yes, 3 no. Parents and community had 307 yes and 72 no. So that's big for them. Staff, same thing, 112 yes and 10 no. And board members, 3 yes and 2 no. Some board members didn't fill out all of those answers, and I didn't record anything because I didn't have it there, but you did record what you intended on and what you wanted to be heard about, I'm sure. So in our view, teaching experience, and not only that, but from the comments today by staff and others, should be required. That's our opinion. At least preferred, but teaching is pretty basic to this field. That's the issue. Then, administrative experience. Similar numbers. Students, 6 yes, 1 no. Parents and community, 355 yes, 224 no is all. Staff, larger margin, 117 yes and 5 no. And then board, 5 yes, 0 no. So with that, we, in our recommendation, administrative experience needs required. And we'll list that. I'll show you on the brochure here in a bit how that works. But then student superintendent experience, what to do with that. Now here's the challenge as well. If you require superintendent experience, and that doesn't mean you don't want that, it just means that if you require it at this point in time in this process, we will screen those who don't have it out, or they won't apply. So it now narrows the pool. And you don't at this juncture probably want it narrowed. But you have some other options. And you'll notice on the sheet I put preferred or required, but we wouldn't put that in. But we would either put preferred or required. And some boards choose strongly preferred. Now we know in this setting and the size of your district and the needs you have currently, it's best probably to have someone who has had experience. That's just an assessment, especially because if you have someone who hasn't had it, they would come here and not only have to learn of Dunlap, but also learn to become a superintendent in that same time. So there's a double challenge for them. But it depends on the individual. And there may be someone who's a rising star coming through the system, in the system somewhere or wherever, and that they can do the job. I mean, we all started our jobs first time somewhere, and I didn't know what I was doing at all, and I don't sometimes now. But it's better, at least. So that's something we're going to talk a little bit closer in the brochure. You're going to see that. And then residents, 5 students yes, 2 no. Community, 293 yes and 86 no. Staff, 88 yes, 34 no. And then board, 6 yes and 0 no. Now, I also learned today, and I believe this is accurate, if I share with you that what I believe is the case, that principals are required to reside in the district. Do you recall if that's right? Okay. And that's only needs to be known that that is the case. And now what do you do with the superintendent? Not assistants, I don't believe. Am I accurate? Principals are required. Okay, so that just is a factor and needs to be considered, maybe in fairness or whatever, one way or the other, whether superintendent's not and then they're not, or but they're here. So I want you to keep that paper close at hand while I pass now to you this document, which is the brochure, or now it's these are the open comments from the online survey and the recording of the things I learned yesterday and today. And what I'm going to do with those is like I did last time, give these to you after when we're finishing, because there's no reason to go we're not going to muddle through all this, but you will. And so that'll be next. So here's what I would ask of you to do. We have a 2-sided document, 8.5 by 14. that I would like you to open up and have the side facing you that has the eagle on it. Open it up like that. Okay? And I want us to go through this a little bit and make sure that what we're looking at is acceptable. You're also still going to have time to review this when I email it to you as a final form. And then I'll get that back from you, and Karen, you would be the person to make sure everyone agrees this is now okay and tell me it's ready to go. I then order a proof from our publication department and back in a much nicer looking form than this. It will be on slick paper. It'll be just really pretty fancy. So what I want you to look at is especially now the highlighted areas. You notice the Board of Education, and I apologize and I appreciate, I think Teresa, you pointed out to me that I had her as Beth Rice, not Beth Reed. Did you even notice it?
No,
I
I
did.
didn't.
Okay.
I figured that would say.
So with that, I want to make sure that your names are here and spelled correctly and that the numbers of years in service are correct.
Should they be alphabetical? Because Teresa's name, if so, Teresa's name should be before my name.
That can occur. We did it based on the way they were given to us in the general information form.
Sure.
But typically, the president, vice president, and secretary are listed first. And then the alphabetical can be the case, or you can do them all alphabetical. What's your preference?
I don't care, but
Make a difference?
I think since I have fewer years on the board, Teresa's name should go on top.
Well, let
because
me
the
ask,
others are
then it's
alphabetical.
your name would move. Are you okay with us putting yours at the
On the
bottom?
absolutely.
All right. That's what we'll do. Any other change to that piece? Okay, we're going to come back. And in fact, I should have highlighted, I want the next column, you notice it says ideal candidate. Those bullets I meant to leave highlighted and neglected to do it today when I finished this. They're still in decision making because they are based on this form. Because I put them in the order of the most votes of the most groups. So candidates know when they see this, that's what your top priority is. But notice underneath you have experience with a question mark and you have residence with a question mark. So those are the areas that we would identify something to the effect of previous teaching and administrative experience is required, or whatever you state. Previous superintendent experience, and we usually put the word successful in it, just to make a point. Whatever you state there. And then residence, once employed, is required, or whatever you state there. So we'll come back to that. But the next one that's not tough to make a decision on probably is in the next column where it says application instructions. Those are our, every time we have a form, that's the instructions. This is how this works. March 1st, 2018 is our recommended closing date. Are you okay? Now, this, as you know by now, this is all consensus. This is not action by, motions and all that, but it is March 1st. Anyone object to March 1st? So everyone's okay with that? Okay? Now, turn the document over. Now what I would ask of you is to take a look at the first column and notice in the highlighted area, I have, it is anticipated that the total compensation package will be based on successful experience and education. This is the most common statement we see this day and age of that part. And part of it is because, well, candidates have already looked at your website and they know what's previously been paid. I mean, I did that when I first began to look into coming here to talk to you about search for you. But this way, you have time to make decisions yourselves on that. And I've shared with you the compensation comparable of 2016. And that's only salary and TRS. That's the ISBE stuff of Peoria County and the surrounding counties. So you'll have time later to do numbers if you wish. Now, some districts do list numbers, but I can tell you from experience when they list a range of numbers like something to something, as a former candidate, I get this. I only saw the top one. I didn't pay attention anymore to the other. We've also learned to do it in just with one number and say it's in the range of that number. It could be 5 to 20 over or 5 to 20 under. That's a little more effective. But are you, as a group, and by the way, it's expected that the initial contract would be for a multi-year period. Normally, a 3-year contract is typical. And most candidates who are successfully sitting in a place now won't go for less. They just aren't going to uproot and move and take that chance. So what is any objection to that statement of compensation? Are you okay with that? Everyone?
Yes.
All right. Now, on the far right, we have added still, again, March 1 is the deadline, and you've already stated that you're fine with that. We would present candidates to you in March. You would conduct your interviews March/April, and you would name someone by the end of April. Now, by the end of April could still be end of March or the first week of April or whatever that is. The other piece of this is your break is the week before Easter, and Easter is April 1st. And some places have breaks other than that. Some of them are ahead of the end of a week or two and others after it. But I think this is a safe place for candidates to know. The real date they need is March 1. After that, they're only interested in the other dates if they're in this mix. So we work through that. Then the final point is the questions that are asked. And you'll notice that we have 7 of them on the very far right column that they have to answer to these statements. They have to respond to them in the online application. So when you had this application stuff last time for Mantrums, you got about somewhere between 5 and 8 pages maybe. You're going to get 20 to 30 pages now of these candidates because they will submit a ton of stuff. But they'll answer the questions about what their experience is in curriculum, instructional, implementation, their experience in school finance, their developing goals, describe their experience in building relationships, working with diverse populations, which you have quite a lot. Not only ethnicity, quite a lot of that, but socioeconomic. Not as much difference, but there's a balance in there. And then they must, number 6 then is really the critical part of this. We say to them, having read the ideal candidate section of the announcement of vacancy, why do you feel you're a match for this district? So they have to go back to the bullets and respond to those areas. And we continually tell candidates, be the same person who applies for the job who actually is going to come and sit in the chair. See what I mean by that? Because some folks can answer these questions and not have a clue. But we try to see through that, and we do the reference check stuff to make that occur. Then the final one, are you aware of the residency requirement for this position? We ask it several times because I've been disappointed before by candidates who will say to me, I'll move in, and then verbally say to me, I'll move in, and then get to the meeting and the final 2 candidates and they're offered maybe the job and they won't move in. Not a good plan. That's not ethical even. So we're careful to try to assess that and make sure. What will you do? If you state preferred rather than required, that word will be there instead of the required. So that question needs answered as we get to the bullets here. So now, turn it back over, kind of making you jump around here. Now, you guys, I can tell already, you all have been excellent students in school because you're sitting very attentively, and I like how you're agreeing with me with what all things we're doing here, so that's a good place. But with that, let's look at the bullets that are here. They reflect the results of the online survey. And many of them also reflect, I can tell you from my memory of what I encountered yesterday and today, some of the same things that are in the comments from people. So my question to you, and maybe you want a little more time to look them over, and by the way, when I send back to you cleaning this up further, moving Abby to different in the list and making sure everything's, I'll take off the highlight of anything that's been decided on. And you'll see it again and still have time to make sure it's like you want it to be. the key to this is to know that this is the advertisement of the vacancy. This is not yet filling it. This isn't going to drive the whole process fully. Once you get the applications and then they come in and you interview them, that's really the time. You know that. So discussion, does anyone have an issue with any of these 7 that are here? Do you want something else added to the ideal candidate bullets? Because the candidates will answer questions, that one, number 6, about them.
Tom,
Yes, please.
just as you used to look at these, I would get these often.
Right.
And one thing that I really wasn't aware of was, the bullets. You would read those and you think, okay, that's what every good superintendent would do. But what I think is significant that you said to me that maybe isn't necessarily stated is that they were listed in order
They
of importance or in order of what the district or the
If
surveys.
you look at here,
Right. I'm wondering.
That's what it is.
I'm wondering if, do you ever put on here, these are listed in order of.
We can.
Of survey result preference?
Mm-hmm.
The first one being number 1 and 2, because I think that's pretty,
we in
Interesting
fact
information.
we can put that statement there, Abby, and then we can put numbers on it.
I don't know if anyone else thinks that's important, but I think that as a candidate, that would have been helpful to me.
Okay.
As a former superintendent looking at these, I didn't realize there was any significance in these or how they were selected. I just thought, okay, those are all good qualities. Every good superintendent should have those qualities, and that's what you need. But
So
it's
what's your,
interesting.
if you want us to add something stating the fact that they are in a preferential order or by order of
Survey results.
survey results, top vote getters are first and numbered maybe, or something like that. What's your thoughts about that?
I think that's a really good point, particularly for a candidate to see. The only thing, if we're moving, without really looking at the numbers, when I'm looking at the staff numbers over here, a lot of them are very, very close. So I'm not sure that this, completely reflects, like a clear order. Definitely number 1. The acts with integrity, that's number 1 across the board. And the same thing goes for the board. We've got a couple of 5s in there, so there's a lot of ties.
Right. There
So
are.
I don't know, it's a clear reflection of all the stakeholder input to say this is the exact order. I
Here-
don't know, we'd have to
here's
really look at the numbers.
Well, it's as close to the order as we can get based on the numbers we've received.
Yeah.
That is
But I
what it
think
is.
2, 3, and 4 listed might be just about
Well,
tied,
we
is what I'm
can
saying.
not, we don't have to put a number on it, meaning just leave the bullet here.
Yeah.
And then put something to the effect that these are listed in the order of importance from the survey results, something like that. And that's clear. That's kind of a softer statement, perhaps. Everyone okay with that?
This is the result of 515 people
Yeah,
taking the survey.
I won't probably make that
No, but
known.
my point is, that's
Yep.
pretty good sample.
So what I can do is incorporate that into this beginning statement and probably put it right before the place where it says the superintendent of our district should be an educational leader who, : So it's going to be there, but I'll put it in and send it to you, and you can look it over.
And maybe that's just something where if we have a little bit of time to look at it,
Yeah.
and make sure that it really does reflect.
And you do. You have time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
So beyond that, are these 7 based on what if they're based on the results of the survey, those were the ones. And they are listed the best I may go back and reanalyze the numbers a little bit and try to do a better job making sure that they're in the order they need to be.
Yeah.
But it's not that difficult either. But, okay, so are these 7 okay for now? They're all right.
Yes.
Now, you have then 2 things to decide: experience and residence. So is there anyone that does not agree that does everyone agree that they should have required to have been a teacher?
Yes.
Anyone
Yes.
not? Administrator.
Yes.
Yes.
So required to be a teacher and administrator. What about superintendent? Now, know that superintendent is, of course, the administrator. And when I come with candidates and give you the information of them, I will put on there that they meet that, whatever that is, the teaching and administration and or superintendent. I'll list those for you. So what about, though, the superintendent? What's your preference? Preference is the wrong word. Is it preferred or is it required?
Required, for me.
Required.
I'd say
Others?
strongly preferred.
I'm going to say that as well. Somebody does not going to be an assistant superintendent that's very highly qualified.
Okay. So right now I have 2 required and 2 strongly preferred.
Yeah, I guess that was my question too. When you say the experience, superintendent experience is required, does that count for an interim superintendent experience or an assistant superintendent?
Not assistant. The
so-
interim piece, we don't see that often, but if they've been an interim somewhere, that could be needed, but an assistant will not. Actually, being the superintendent is what we're talking about. Previous administration covers assistant superintendent, principal on back, but the superintendent is what we're discussing here. Okay. So
I
what's
would, I would say strongly preferred then at this time.
okay. 2 people have not responded.
I'm between strongly preferred and required. Do you have does anybody want to?
I have an example of just, and it may not mean anything, but sometimes when there are big decisions to be made and you have an assistant, a lot of the times that they will kind of put that decision aside to wait for, well, that's talking like an assistant superintendent, not an interim.
we're
But we've
talking-
had the past where they'll just, it'd be easy just to put it aside and they're going to wait for the superintendent to come back to make those real big decisions. So I don't know the experience that they've had in that decision making.
Right.
Could be critical if they're an assistant superintendent.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back, Dawn, to your question about interim. I can't say that I recall having over the years an application of someone who has been an interim, because there's certain things that calls, they may be an interim, typically will be someone who has already been one, and like you have now here. But an
I was an
interim-
interim
well-
before I was acting.
And so they actually, well, that does occur.
Yeah,
You
so
have
they
had that even
appointed
here.
someone as an interim.
Yeah, you have had that here too, previously, didn't you? Yeah, well, then I take back what I said. I was wrong. But back then to, Beth, your point, what about superintendent? You already said required, so a couple of folks have not answered that question. And I know
I just
Karen's one of
prefer-
those. Karen's one of them, right?
I cannot decide. How much do you think it will limit our pool? Do you have any sense of that?
Yes, it will limit it. I would think that it would take out a quarter of people. And you still can require it later. You see, you could say strongly preferred, and most candidates will, in fact, I've had calls of when we list it that way, they'll say they're going to require it. And I said, very well possible, very possible. And you still can require it when the time comes. And if we know it's strongly preferred, we'll try to screen experienced people in. See?
And I think that's a nice option too, because there could be, like you said, a rising star out there who really has that management piece down and who's able to make those critical decisions.
That's right. Yeah.
And who does a nice
You know,
job.
I will tell you, the junior, senior high principalship is probably the most training level of making tough decisions and carrying stress. I remember them. I mean, it's just like, holy cow. And the superintendent, though, has a different level of waves of stress or strain. Stress is wrong. I don't like that word, but it's so someone who's very successful at what they're doing is what you want. Yeah. So other than
And I think Abby hasn't had a chance to respond, and then I can follow up as well.
Thank you.
If
Okay.
you have a position.
I think it's very important that we select someone who gets, and we want to make sure they're a great quality candidate. We
Right.
need to get this right.
Right.
And so the experience part of me says that we really want someone that has that superintendent experience. But I also know in the past, there are some people that are just meant to be very good superintendents who, some very dear friends of mine, who didn't necessarily have it, but came in and were
Right.
great superintendents. But I think of those people, we need to really do our due diligence and research and look at backgrounds and I know you will do that.
That's
But I
right.
think we as a board need to do that as well. So I would say that we would prefer superintendent experience, maybe even strongly prefer, but I don't think we want to limit ourselves by saying they must have been a
okay,
superintendent.
okay.
And I would be okay with strongly preferred.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that Dawn clarified, are we talking about the assistant superintendents would not be qualified? And if you have assistant superintendents coming with, our former superintendent had the background of all the years, and also
Right.
as an assistant superintendent, and she was qualified.
Right.
And you may have assistant superintendents coming from larger school districts or smaller school districts. that
And,
handle
or principals that come
many
from
hats.
larger.
Yeah, I think the superintendent, having that district experience, either as a superintendent or assistant superintendent,
Okay.
would be strongly preferred, like
So
Brian said.
are we then leaning to the strongly preferred?
I think so.
It sounds like it.
Everyone? You're okay? Anyone not okay with that? So strongly preferred, and we're talking, so now there's going to be a separate line. It'll say teaching and administrative experience. I may have included in the same sentence, but it'll state something about teaching and administrative experience required with previous superintendent experience strongly preferred or something like that. Okay. So required teaching and admin, and then strongly preferred superintendent. Okay. The final piece of this for this evening actually is the residents. And that's the only thing on here we haven't talked about. And you're going to have an opportunity to read this more thoroughly yourselves through entirely, make sure there's no errors. This tells your story and we want it absolutely perfect. But residents, on the list, we recommended required based on what the numbers said, and also knowing that your principals are required, that's a factor. So what's your pleasure?
Required.
Anyone not? All right. Okay. I'm going to pass these out to you, and beyond that, I've completed what I came to do this evening. And not that I don't want to see you guys, but I've got a 2-hour plus ride home. And my lovely dear one at home
Thank you.
make sure that I come back. Yeah, and I will. So other thoughts? Are you good?
Very good. Thank you so much for the
Thank
time.
you.
that
Thank
put
you,
into
guys.
it.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Who was the second? Okay. It's been moved by Abby Humble, seconded by Don Bozeman. Is there discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. The meeting is adjourned.
Safe travels.